I want to really, first of all, just say and thank everybody for coming. It's a very, very sad occasion. Not only is it a rainy Sunday, but it's a tremendous kavod for an individual, particularly this year where so many people unfortunately have had funerals that were so limited and so constrained. To see such an outpouring of people, of relatives and family and friends here to give the kavod achron to Mrs. Jacoby, to Leah Bas Reb Yehuda Aleh Shalom. Going to begin, and I'm conscious of the weather, going to begin with the recitation of 2 parakim of Tehillim, appropriate for the occasion, and then we're going to have words of, it is the month of Nisan, so we're not supposed to call them as baby eulogies, but words of reflection and parting. Ashrei ha'ish asher lo halach b'atzad rishayim u'b'derech hatayim lo amad u'b'moshat leitzim lo yashav ki im b'torat Adonai chefso b'torato yageh yomam b'laylo v'haya k'eit shatul al b'hagei mayim asher pirio yitem b'tov yaleu lo yibo v'chol asher yaseh yatzliach lo chen harishayim kim kamotz asher tifenu ruach Okay, no yakom rishayim b'mishpat b'chatayim b'adat tzadikim ki yodeh Adonai derech tzadikim b'derech rishayim tovet. One more parak Tehillim. Mizmor leDavid Adonai roi lo echsar bino desha yarbitzeini omei menuchot yanahaleini nafshi yeshovev yancheni b'mag letzedek leman shemo gam ki elech b'geit salmavet lo yirara ki ata imadi Shivtecha u'mishantecha hema yenachamuni Taroch lefana shulchan neged tzorai Nishanta b'shemen roshi kosi revaya Achtov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai L'shavti b'veit Adonai le'orech yamim. I'm going to now start with speeches, and who's going to go first? If you ask people just to take a step back for a little bit more room, tiny bit more distancing, and also give people more of an opportunity to be able to see.
Should you want me to stand up here? It's going
to be quick. It's not too long. Okay. Lillian Weiss Jacoby, Leah Batbina, Lilika, Lily Kutza, Mamala, Malil. An Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor. We learn from both our parents, both the good and sometimes the bad. If we're lucky, we learn to emulate their good behavior, their good deeds, how they handle life's ups and downs, and their compassion for others. In Mom's case, there really was no bad. She was a devoted daughter, a loving wife, a beloved mother of 4, grandmother of 10, and though she didn't know it, a great grandmother of 4. She was the calmest, sweetest person I know. She never had a bad thing to say about anyone, and I don't think there's a bad thing anyone could have or would have said about her. It's my goal in life to be as caring, charitable, honest, and calm as my mom was. Hashem has finally released her from these 16 years of such an awful disease. For us, it has truly been the long goodbye. A year ago, I saved this quote from Facebook, and it happened to come up again the day Mom passed away. In a society that has you counting money, pounds, calories, steps, be a rebel and count your blessings instead. I am so blessed to have had my mom for all these years. May her memory be a blessing. I miss you, Mama. I love you.
So, Malil, I consider myself lucky to have vivid memories of your amazing personality. Loud, funny, a genuine excitement for life. You generally just made the people around you happier, feel better, well fed for sure. It was clear that you loved to be surrounded by your family. You were given a test with your illness. We were all given a test. I do believe that every test that God gives is specific to the people it's given to. I think us as a family passed this test with flying colors. And speaking for all the grandchildren, I believe there was a lot we learned and can learn from our family's reaction as a whole. It started with Gramps, leading as an example for all of us, showing us what it means to be a real husband, giving up his shul, his friends, his life to move to a place where his wife could be happier. It's rare to see commitment like that anymore, and we're lucky to have witnessed it. As grandchildren, we got to witness what true kibbud av v'em looks like, true honor for your father and mother. I could say for myself and my siblings, we had the privilege of watching our parents take care of our grandmother for the past 10 plus years, delivering weekly food and supplies without fail. I know my Lil was always especially excited for that weekly leftover children delivery. You guys are role models. It was a special thing watching you and your siblings care so deeply for your mother, wanting to see her as happy and comfortable as possible. You have all set a clear example for us what it means to respect your parents. The beautiful thing is that you guys really gave my Lil a presence and personality of her own while she battled the disease that tried to take it away. It's a true testament for who my Lil was. Finally, I hope they're listening, but there's no speech about my Lil without discussing Avita and Julio. Walking angels, like another set of grandparents. You know, Avita, it would get to the point where I was scared to see you without a girlfriend because you'd start yelling at me that I'm not serious in life and I'm drinking too much. And we're blessed to know you guys. And Marianne, you have been incredible to my grandmother for all these years. You were like a rabbi, minister, everything, you know, always brought spirituality around her, and we're very thankful for you. All of you, all three of you gave comfort to an entire family for so many years, just knowing you were there, and you'll always be family to us. And my little only person I can say I'm happy for in all this is Grandpa, because we all know he's been waiting to see you again.
Wait, can you give me that?
Wait, Darren.
Yeah.
You can't?
Can you say it out loud? Or yeah, just cover me.
No? Okay, good. You got it?
Yeah. First of all, Matthew is still drinking, so I don't know what,
Lot left.
all right. Before I really say anything, I want to reiterate what Matthew said. We need to publicly recognize Avita, Julio, and Rayanne. You're all extraordinary people. You allowed Mom to live the most dignified life possible, the highest quality of life possible, and likely added many years of life because you all cared for her so much. Your kindness and devotion to her will never be forgotten by any of us. Thank you so, so much. As the youngest of 4 children, I had some unique experiences with my mother. The first was apparently when she found out she was pregnant with me 5 years after giving birth to Stephen. According to my Bobby, my mom's mother, she cried, and these apparently weren't tears of joy. Her less than exuberant reaction to my conception was confirmed maybe 15 years later when I was blabbering on about my views on abortion at the Shabbat table. She looked at me and said, "You should be thankful that I'm not pro-abortion." My reaction was, huh? What you talking about, Willis? I, of course, consider myself to be the best mistake that they ever made. Mom was real funny and she was really witty. She also confirmed for me that I was the best mistake that she ever made, by the way. She also had some fears and maybe difficulty adapting to change. She never got her driver's license. She wouldn't use an ATM machine. She never rode a bike and wouldn't put her face in the water when she swam. She swam what we described as the mommy stroke, which is like the breaststroke with your head out of the water, and usually with like a frilly bathing cap of some sort, so as not to ruin the latest trip to the beauty parlor, whatever a beauty parlor is, I have no idea. She was also one of the least confrontational people I've ever met. The truth is, as a younger kid, I kind of thought she might have been a little timid or weak even, but with a little life experience and the experience of having my own relationships with a spouse, children, siblings, friends, it taught me how strong she was. Being argumentative or combative with someone you care about is actually pretty easy. The desire to be right gets in the way for most of us. Mom had the inner strength and frankly self-confidence to de-escalate and allow her loved ones to win arguments. As the youngest, Mom used to take me shopping with her. Around the age of 8 or 9, Mom took me to Loman's, a now defunct retailer, I think only for Jews. What she didn't tell me was that there was a back room in the store where only women were allowed, and there were no fitting rooms back there. Women could try on clothes out in the open in the aisles. That would have been useful information to have. I was walking around the store looking for Mom. I casually strolled into the back room where I was confronted with dozens, let's just say, less than fit, middle-aged Jewish women in their bra and underwear. I still have nightmares to this day. It's a miracle I didn't intermarry. She was the most kind and nurturing mom. Like her mother before, she put her family members before herself. She cared for everyone in her life with passion, my grandparents, my dad, and all of us. My dad sadly got the opportunity to reciprocate when Mom's disease progressed and she needed looking after, and he did so with the utmost care and compassion. Our home growing up was certainly one of the neighborhood homes where my friends were always around and welcome. I knew how much she loved having 10 sweaty teenage boys running up and down stairs, slamming doors, as she described one unnamed friend, Henzel, lounging around, watching TV, and consuming most of our food. Truth is, she really did enjoy it. One more story about Mom that most of my family members know, but could possibly tie into her not so positive reaction when she found out she was pregnant with me. As a 3 or 4-year-old visiting Michelle in camp one summer, the family stayed in a motel with family friends, the Rubens. Esty is here, I think. She was in the same camp as Michelle. Not knowing how to swim yet or how pools are actually built, I looked at the top level of the water and I remember thinking, yeah, I can walk across the pool. No big deal. I went into the pool unsupervised and with no floaties because this was 1970 and started to walk. When I hit the deep section, I immediately went under and started fighting to keep myself above water. Each time I went down and came up, I remember looking over at my mother on the side of the pool who was smoking a cigarette and not moving from her lounge chair. This is weird, I thought. She must have thought I was playing. So I'm bobbing up and down in the water for what seemed like a really long time. And at some point, I looked over to my mother and she was actually waving at me. So as I'm drowning, I'm thinking how odd it is that she's waving hi to me. But then it hit me that she was actually saying goodbye. I think that's how it ties into the whole pregnancy. I don't know, maybe she just came from the beauty parlor and didn't want to ruin her hair. Obviously, I'm kidding, and I'm sort of thankful to Mrs. Rubin for jumping in and rescuing me. But this is the true opportunity for me to properly say goodbye to who I know was the kindest, most loving, and giving mother around. You're with me in my heart always, and somewhat cliche, I actually do believe that she's in a better place right now. Love you forever, Mom.
Hello.
Darren's a buddy. Yeah, it's going on now. So we can't really hear.
You can do a phone call.
Just wait for it.
Yeah, just
Alan.
mute this, he said.
Hey everyone, Evan's gonna know when they're calling in so they can hear me on a speaker. Let's see. Yeah, some of you guys can hear me, but the funeral folks, they don't have a speaker on that camera, so I think they're going to call in.
Darren, we're listening. We're hearing you.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks everyone for being here. Sad day. Sad days. I wrote a little bit too long of a speech, so I wanted to make sure they spend as much time as possible in the rain. But it really feels, in some ways, today, like we're capping the end of an era. 1 second. Technical difficulties. Yes. You can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Darren.
We're capping the end of an era, and a pretty amazing era that, for me, my little and grandpa Aaron, and their peers who came to this country represent so prototypically, a generation with their head down, hardworking, driven folks, really ready to do whatever it takes to make a better life for themselves, for their families, and for those around them. And they did that really well, as you can hear from the people who spoke before me. So today we're here in honor of Malil and the life that she lived. Now, Malil's been sick for a really long time, 16 years, as Mitchie said. And with diseases like these that are becoming more and more prominent, where you can have a physically healthy body for a really long time, but slowly and sometimes quickly lose the cognitive ability to communicate, to remember, etc. It gives that person experiencing that disease what must be a pretty unique existence. And I think for us, that person carries a really special meaning and a burden that's worth discussing today. So for my memories of Malil, from my early days, I have some vague recollections of the time we spent together, showing up at the Woodmere house. She's at the door, greeting us with that big smile. And then immediately we come in, start breaking things, start going to the garage and taking golf balls and throwing them at stuff. And she's running around taking care of business, cooking, cleaning, just doing whatever she was doing, and to make sure that all of us were taken care of. One specific thing, I remember having her soup when they moved to one of the apartments, and I basically turned to my mom and said, I don't know what flavor is in this thing, but we need to get this in the rotation ASAP. And pretty soon that dill has been a staple of our Friday night soup every week. I think all who have been over can agree it's a welcome addition and something that reminds me of Malil. It's also even more impressive that my mom was convinced to do anything resembling flavor and putting it into one of our foods. So that's how it was good and impactful. But the memories are vague, for me. And there are many people who have spoken to the amazing, kind, and caring woman she so clearly was, better than I can. But for me, in watching her later years, since Malil has been sick and I had some semblance of a brain that works, there was always something incredible Malil was doing for everyone around her, still bearing the burden that matriarchs so often do in their families, to bring peace and cohesion to those she's been responsible for and is and has been uniquely suited to shepherd in the right direction. I think one idea that I thought was relevant is when Heidegger talks about in Building, Dwelling, Thinking, he proposes that human being, the verb of what it means is being human, occurs mostly in a state of what he calls dwelling. It's a state of kind of conserving, reacting to the environment, surviving, the kind of more stressed out existence that most of us operate in most of the time. This is separate and juxtaposed to the concept of being home, a place where emotion is easy, things are fluid, there's safety, security, comfortability, and a sense of place and purpose. The experience of being for most of us is mainly dwelling, sometimes feeling at home. I actually learned about this concept in the literature. What am I getting a text about? In the literature about palliative care, the kind of care that Evita and Julio and Rayanne, the saints that they are, gave to Malil for many, many years. Palliative care for many in the health space is defined as care that makes someone in a later stage of their life feel at home, as they live out their remaining days being. That's the experience that a village spearheaded by those two, arm in arm with Malil's children, my parents, aunts, and uncles, were able to give to Malil. And, you know, home in some ways was given to Malil, and she was placed there by others. But as all good philosophies go, there has to be a twist and a counterfactual way to define and look at the system. And as an observer, as I mentioned, yes, Malil was at home. But at the same time, when you look at it, the environment that was forming around her, in which she was so central, with so many people congregating to care for her, caretakers, children, grandchildren, friends, family, and community, each of those players are usually individually fixed into their own struggle of being, their own challenges and aspirations, each of them usually dwelling. But with Malil, each of them and us would step out of our own BS into this common area with a shared purpose, a shared centerpiece, and a shared experience with evident belonging to be there. So that experience of coming together with and for Malil, when you look at it from that perspective, it really seems an awful lot like Malil wasn't being the one being placed at home, rather she was creating a home for our family and our community to meet and come together in. Now, it wasn't always a home with a warm fire pit and cookies and milk for those meeting there. It was hard, but a home is a home, and only because of the sacrifice Malil made living with this disease, it was very much in line with the devotion to those around her she had shown her entire life, for all those she cared for until her final days moved by her home together. So what I learned from watching Malil is that that's what it means to be the pillar of something, not the loudest, not the most outward and aggressive, but a literal rock and foundation on which a structure is built. And as a living, breathing example of that structure that she sacrificed to make possible and give me and my siblings and cousins the opportunities and life we're lucky to have, I'm so thankful that she was a woman of this character who would do whatever it takes to make a better life for her and her family. That kind of devotion, love, and the truly ultimate success that comes from it, will always leave me in awe of Malil, Grandpa Aaron, and her and their life well lived. We should all take note of what we can do to do our share, maybe a little bit more like she did, to bring others from dwelling into home. Thanks. I think they're also getting poured on out there, so they might have ditched, but let's see.
Just thank you everyone for coming in this weather, and the turnout for my mom. I think it would be overwhelming because she was a very private person, and she really, it's very significant also because her mother, who she was so close with, passed away on a Friday and everything got rushed. So I'm very happy for the honor, and I appreciate the sacrifice of everyone coming in the rain. Just a couple of things Alan talked about. He talked about when he almost drowned in the pool. And the reason why he survived was that weekend, I was a very difficult child, and I was stubborn, and I wanted to take my raft in the car. And my parents said there was no room. It wasn't just that I wanted to take my raft, they wanted to take the blown up raft. So they left me home. They usually, you know, I've modeled my parenting kind of after them, usually emptythreats.com with a parenting website, but in that time they were able to follow through because my grandparents were home. Had I been there, I don't know, we weren't so close that I was distracting even Mrs. Rubin. And when you said mom was always around and slamming doors, I always wondered why she was sleeping on the couch Shabbos afternoon. I said, we might as well sleep on Peninsula Boulevard. It was so noisy, but she wanted to know what was going on. Sarah pointed out as a mother. So I just want to cover some things that weren't covered. That's why I wanted to go last. Mom was born in Bucharest in 1935. She lived with her parents and her brother Joe through the bombings of World War II. After World War II, she was, they relocated to a DP camp in Germany. Mom was probably 13, 14 years old. She was blonde. She looked like a non-Jewish girl. She understood German. And when she went to the town to buy supplies from the DP camp, she understood they were saying the vermin are back about the Jews. So these experiences made mom understandably a little bit of a scared person. And therefore she never learned how to drive, as Alan pointed out. And some of my friends know, when she got Cedar's taxi loved her. And when she got in her, she would say 624 Emerson, corner Barnard. That was just the way she said it, and we all remember that. She went to high school in New York. She went to high school in New York, I think Erasmus High, Erasmus. Okay, thank you. I want to make sure you're listening. She had a boyfriend. She was a very pretty woman. She had a boyfriend about 17, 18 years old. His name was Sammy or Samala as the family. And he's known that he liked to go to the beach and suntan. But my mom went to a dance and she met this handsome handsome, ambitious car-owning survivor at a dance. And he asked her out and he came home and he met the family. And my father used to say once Bobby fed him food, he was smitten. He had no free choice anymore. But then one day, Samala called the house, and the grandmother, my mother's grandmother, only spoke Yiddish, she said to him, "She's going with Arla, you're finished." How many grandmothers can get away with that today? Maybe Mom Earl. Anyway, so they get married in 1953. And my father had a car. That was one of the things that was great about him, but it was a bait and switch. As soon as they got married, he sold the car to buy a sewing machine to start the curtain business. And, you know, signs of the patriarchs, whatever the descendants. So the same thing happened with Sarah when I met her. We had a Jaguar, which was a lease. My father had a Jaguar. I never had a Jaguar. And we got married and it went back, and then we had an Avalon. So along came Susie, Mishy, me, and Alan in 1966. And Mom thought it was weird having a child at 31. You know, she thought it was old. In 1961, we moved from Brooklyn to Woodmere, part of the big migration to the burbs, early members of Young Israel of Woodmere. Mom, you're always so nice and beautiful, calm, witty, in a very complimentary way to Dad's joke-telling and more outgoing personality. Our friends who visited knew if you had a little of your favorite Asti Spermonti, your wit was unsurpassed. In fact, one weekend, Drew Parker is here and David Hofstetter is hopefully listening in Israel. We were hanging out for a weekend. We were, I don't know, 26, 27 years old, single, just having a good time, laying on the couch, playing golf. And my mother looked at us and said, "Three good-looking boys. This is how you spend your weekend," and ruined our lives. So, of course, they listened to my mother. They got married within a year or two. It took me 3 or 4 years of being stubborn and waiting for the right person. Mom, you let Dad tell humorous stories about you. Like you planned a birthday party for Dad, a surprise party. And you had this caterer butcher named Beirut, who was okay, he was a good man, but he wasn't the best looking man. and all of a sudden, Sunday morning, the phone rings, and it must have been Beirut. And you pick up the phone, you said, "I can't speak, my husband's home." Slam down the phone. So from then on, you had this mysterious boyfriend, and Beirut, Mom was like, "I could do so much better." And it was a whole routine. Everybody knew about it. But you had some good stories about Dad, but you stopped telling them if you thought he didn't like them. You and Dad had a 60 years of a love story. You were a glamorous couple attending dress-up functions for shuls, social functions, smachot, and on vacations, fully immersed in the post-war revival years for Americans and American Jews. Thank you. Traveling in Israel in 1965, before the 67 war, you took the entire family and your parents and Bobby and Grandpa to visit relatives not seen since living in Europe in the 40s. We stayed in a divided Jerusalem and in Haifa. It was a very different place, Israel, then. You also then realized that you wouldn't have to splurge on an Ivy League education. After a week of being there, I said, "When are we getting to Israel?" You were a blonde American beauty. Dad was offered many camels for you in the Jerusalem show as you hurried him out. You traveled in the late 1960s and 70s to secure the release of Aunt Frida and family. Dad made you nervous when he brought an extra pair of tefillin to leave in Russia. And when asked upon entering Russia why he needed 2 pairs, he said one was for my wife. When Mom passed away, by the way, and the rabbi just commented to me, she passed away on the 26th of Nisan. He said, "Wow, her shloshim will be the 26th of Iyar, Dad's yahrzeit." What a love connection.
Wow.
Technically, it's not true, but all of the Pesachs you took us away to apartments where you slaved to set up our beach vacations, which we never thank you enough for. When someone commented on her tan, she said it's oven burn. When you finally got into the pool, you would do your famous aerobic class of this is for the kugel and this is for the cake. Like most relationships, it was less than perfect at times, but when you stopped speaking 15 years ago, you brought out the best in Dad and everyone else in the family, although it broke Dad's heart. Dad was determined after seeing your mother's decline and closing years in a nursing home not to allow the same for his beloved Lily. One cute story, when Dad was probably 80 and you were not well, you kept on kissing him, and he cracked us all up when he said, "Where were you 30 years ago?" And he spared no expense, not just money, but his own welfare, where to live, leaving Lawrence, and not accepting social invites. He spared no expense to make sure that you had the best care with the most dignity possible, and he succeeded with Hashem's help. Dad moved to Deerfield so you could attend the Volin Center, outpatient place, and Dad found you round-the-clock help. Not just help, he found the LeBron James of AIDS, Vita, whose love and integrity and devotion inspires us daily, and who God sent literally as an angel to care for you. Avita took care of Mom, I think, for 13 years, 6 days a week with almost zero vacation. Also, Rayanne, whose devotion and love to Mom on Saturdays went beyond. When the time came a few years ago that Mom needed 2 people to take care of her, God sent us Julio, Avita's husband. We were in an impossible situation, and Julio's long-term patient passed away just at the time that Mom needed him. Now we had KD playing with LeBron. The two of you together with Rayanne all these years, you were able to give Mom such a loving home with her boyfriend Julio. How she adored you. You are honorary members of our family forever, and how you loved them and all the time you spent outdoors. Julio took Mom for fresh air. Countless neighbors we barely knew would say to us, "You are so lucky to have Julio and Avita." Without them and God's help, when Mom passed away, most people would have had to live in a facility. And the two of you, Julio and Avita, got to end your careers as caretakers, kindness givers extraordinaire, working together before returning now to your native Nicaragua. You wanted to go back sooner, but you said, "I told Mr. Jacoby I will stay as long as..." Please, people ask why this terrible disease. I once heard from Rebbitzin Youngrice that Jews don't ask why, they say what for, they say for what. Julio, Avita, and Rayanne, in a world so needing healing and caring, you turned 4074 Berkshire E into an ark or a sanctuary of kindness, not only sustaining Mom, but creating holiness and inspiration for the rest of us. We can never thank you enough for what you've done. I also need to thank Sarah for being a partner in helping to take care of Mom. You accompanied me on Sundays hosting. You've hosted my family, my parents. You took the Pesach frying pan from my mom in an Olympic-like torch ceremony 20 years ago. And more than anything, loved my mom like your own. When it seemed like we were losing Mom a day before she passed, you cried out with such love, "Oh, Mom," and I think you brought her back. And then when I said, "Which shirt should I use for Kriya?" you said, "All of them are eligible." And Mom wouldn't like if I wore the raincoat and the bad shoes. I thought it would bring her back. Anyway, I love you. I don't understand God's ways, but as far as Mom's illness, the effect on all of us has been more love and kindness for you, Mom, and for each other. You were the best mother to me during my formative years, tolerating my idiosyncrasies and moods, shoe thefts during photo shoots, sock burnings, and wrath tantrums, and supporting me in my later years, becoming an adult and a husband and a father. You made us a Sheva Bracha at home days before Pesach, and we were home for Pesach. Sarah still talks about that. You taught us strength and restraint and silence and beauty and elegance in an understated way. May you enjoy a well-deserved rest and reunification with loved ones, especially Dad. And we look forward to seeing you again in your full beauty someday soon. I love you so much, and I hope to live up to the high standards that you and Dad have set before us.
Friends, it's raining, and we're now going to move on to the Gvura, the actual burial, and final closure. I want to thank everybody for those beautiful, beautiful speeches. I didn't have the opportunity, I think once in my life personally, to meet your mother, your grandmother. But listening to the story, first of all, I thought to myself, wow, I wonder what she did in life to be zochet to not just such a funeral, but such an amazing family. I only really know the upper side of the family, pillars of our community. She born in Romania, merited to help be one of the builders of one of the greatest Jewish communities that this country has ever seen, and has descendants who loved her, descendants who live not in America, but in Israel as well. It's an extraordinary story and achievement. I started off with that question, but hearing the speeches, my question is answered. She was a lady who gave unconditional love with, it sounds like, much doses of good humor, and gave love and was loved in return. And despite the rain, I want to say something as a tribute to everybody here, the family members and your late father. Many years ago, when I was a younger rabbi and I was training and spent time with great Rosh Yeshiva to sort of learn the ropes, and I won't give any names and details, but an individual approached the great Rosh Yeshiva, and I was there, I know the story. And it was a rabbi who was coming on behalf of a congregant. The rule is as follows in Judaism: if you're a woman, you're not allowed to have more than one husband. Strictly speaking, according to Torah law, a man is allowed to have more than one wife, but we don't do this polygamy for 1,000 years. But there's something called a heter me'er rabbanim, which is that under extreme circumstances, a man can get permission to take another wife. And an individual approaches rabbi to go to the Rosh Yeshiva and see whether or not, and he wanted to do this. What was the story? His wife had dementia and was gone, was really gone. Didn't know him, didn't know anybody anymore. And the husband was a good man. He wasn't going to abandon his wife. He found her the best home and the best nursing home, the best residential facility. He was going to pay the monthly fees. He put money in escrow. There was no question she would be fed and looked after the rest of his life. But he wanted a life as well. So he wanted permission to leave his wife in a home and take up again and marry. And the rabbi said, according to halacha, it's technically permitted. But that's not our values. That's not how we live our lives. Marriage is for life. Love is for life. Devotion, chesed that a mother, that a wife does, is not conditional only until they can, as long as they can provide it. Those are not our values. Those are not your values. It's an incredible, extraordinary story of a lady who began a decline, a cruel decline, far too young, but held up a mirror to everybody in her family or around her. These are our values. This is how we look after each other. And if you look for meaning, as you said, you look no further than meaning. From these years and acts of chesed and devotion, that's how we live. That's how we learn that we're supposed to live the rest of our lives. She taught so much in life, including in the years where she couldn't even say a word. She taught so much. May her memory be for eternal blessing. Amen. We're going to begin the kavura. I'm going to ask the children to each come forward and place 3 shovelfuls of earth in the grave. And then we're going to go ahead and all finish the kavura. We'll fill in the grave, and then we'll be able to say Kaddish. When we hand the shovel over, please place it back in the earth, and then oh, no, the boys one. Because of the rain, we're not going to stand on ceremony. After the 4 children have gone, we're all going to come forward, take shovels, and fill in the kever as much as expeditiously as possible. Just a reminder, we don't hand the shovel from hand to hand. We place it back in the earth when it's done. Everybody else doesn't need to restrict themselves to 3 shovels. We just fill in the grave in as coveted away as possible. Please come forward and start shoveling.
Yeah, that's right. How much time?
How much battery?
Oh. 72%. Oh, no.
That thing had better work.
No.
Brand new.
Mommy. Yeah.
How much of this we gotta record?
All of it.
Kevin, got a few.
Jack, do you want to shovel?
Huh?
Do you want to shovel?
Yeah. Where's Miss? She's over there. Hey, can you take this while Miss? You take this while you shovel?
I'm not supposed to be responsible for this.
Now I see everyone together and I see the same eyes. With it's the same, of course, now from that, you don't see the eyes. Hello.
See the circles under the eyes.
I know. Yeah.
We're trying to get them to reconnect. Meanwhile, if you have not had a chance to post a message for the family, you could do so in the chat.
Somebody's
We'll
calling me?
pick
No, I think it's you.
Evan? Well, it felt like it was. The host has asked you to start your video. Who's the host? Evan, am I supposed to be using this still?
Actually, that's supposed to be on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I got really like acid.
You want to take this?
I don't really want to.
I know, I just did.
You're living in the mix?
Yeah.
Well, the camera has the time where people can go places in the shop.
Thank you so much. I was actually supposed to be here, Adam Pete's. I was going to go to his house and show him. Let's try and fill in the end so that we want to have the covered. We can.
Who's that?
That's mine. Meanwhile,
There's so much more. Is that the Zoom thing? Yeah.
So
They
I'll just tell all of you one by one, but because it's in Nissan, we don't recite the tongue twister passage, the regular portion passage. And we're going to recite the passage. If you normally didn't, we can also don't recite the Nissan, so it would be Nissan and David, one paragraph, and then a regular.
Yes.
My married daughter,
Who's that?
the name is Pele. He's the party. When he moved in the country,
Oh,
he's in dentist.
very nice. I have a Friday night carve up in my house. I have a Shabbos and I mean, whatever. If I get back, I know you're still rabbi.
So one problem not having an answer.
Whatever.
Okay, once the if I could have everybody's attention, once the casket is completely covered, which it almost is, we're going to resume. As it's still the month of Nisan, we're not going to recite the Hiduk Hadin Tefillah normally recited at this point. Instead, a Perek of Tehillah Nisan with David is recited, and then that's going to be followed by a regular mourner's pattern.
I was going to say.
Wait until we're. Let's just try and get this little space right here in the middle. One more, just literally one more, and that. So just there in the middle, we can just still see the edge of the wood. That's perfect. Okay, if I could claim everybody's attention, please. We're going to resume the service during the month of Nisan. The following psalm is recited, and this is followed by Kaddish. Michtam leDavid Shamreini El Ki Chasiti Bach Amar Adonai Adonai Ata Tovati Balalecho Mikdoshim Asher Ba'aret Hema V'Adirei Kochev Sivam Yirbo Atzavotam Acher Maharu Balasit Nitkei Amidam Ubaletzat Shemotam Al Sifatai Adonai Menan Chelki B'Chosi Ata Tomiz Gorali Chavalim naflu li bani mimahonachlat shabrala abarechet Adonai asher yatzani yafleilot yisruni filiotai shviti Adonai lenegdi tamid kimimini balemot lachein samach libi v'yagel kevodi afbesari yishkon labetach ki lo ta'azov nafshi lishol lo titan chasimcha lirot shachat todieni orech chayim savo samachot et panecha ni'imod v'yimimcha netzach. Now the mourners are going to recite Kaddish.
יתברך, ישתבח, יתפאר, ויתרומם, ויתנשא, ויתהדר, ויתעלה, ויתעלל, שמי וקדושה בריחו, לעילא מכל ברכתה ושירתה ותשבחתה ונחמתה, תמירן בעלמא ויאמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה משמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום ולמה, ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
We conclude, and now that the Gura is halachically done at least, the grave will be still filled, but we now turn our attention to the midst of Nichum Avelim, so allowing the mourners to begin the very first step towards healing and consolation. And we do that by making a shura, what is called a shura. I want to have a parallel line facing in on the path that the four mourners, only the four of each of Avelim, will walk down, and this way we begin the process of healing.
It's you give it to Evan. I think it might be over. Oh, this part is still showing.
Okay, it's so you come up here, Michelle. We'll start up from right up here, and then the mourners will.
And we're going to end the Zoom momentarily. Please post in the chat your messages for the family if you've not done so already. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.